In this video, you're going to work out how much you should be charging as a strategist. You're going to learn 3 things. 1, the equation that works out your day rate. 2, how to charge for projects. And 3, how to negotiate your rate. I'm Julian Cole, and I've been a strategy consultant to Uber, Facebook, Apple, and Disney. All this material comes from my course on how to freelance in advertising. So if you're serious about freelancing, then you should check it out. The link is in the description. The first thing to know is there are 2 main ways of charging, your day rate and project rate. A day rate is when you sell your time for a set price per hour. A project rate is the fee you charge for the final output that you will deliver. For instance, it will cost you $5,000 for a brand strategy workshop. A lot of agencies you will work for will ask you for a day rate. Let me show you how to work out your starting point. The equation for this should be quite simple. Take your current salary, divide it by 250, which is roughly the number of working days in a year, then double it. This is your new day rate. For instance, if you make $50,000 per year, divide it by 250, you'll get 200, and then you double it, you get $400. This is your day rate. If you have a freelancer friends or ex-bosses or recruiters, you can run your rate past them for feedback. However, the best way is to just tell clients or HR your rate. This should now become your floor rate. Your floor rate is the lowest you will go on a project, so you should be aiming to increase this day rate as you go on. The project rate is always preferable as you stop selling your time for money. Instead, you start selling the value of the project to the client. It is also the thing that most strategists find the hardest to do. However, I'm going to break it down into 3 steps for you. If you've watched the video on the first 10 steps of freelancing, you would have seen the steps of writing down your outputs and then the steps involved in that. This information becomes the foundation of your project rate. One of the first things you should do as a freelance strategist is create a list of all the outputs you can deliver. This includes everything you create. The reason this is so important is that strategy can often seem mysterious. Marketers may feel like they need them, but they're unsure of what they will gain from them being on a team. This helps them see the value in what they're going to get. So for instance, when I started freelancing, this was my list of outputs. Creative briefs, comms frameworks, blueprints, comms ecosystem workshops, brand strategy, and channel plans. Once you've compiled your list, write down the significance of each step and why you have it. This allows you to identify when the client may have that issue and then demonstrate the value of that output. So for example, when I talk about the comms framework, its value is that it helps show different messages and media that you need to create. It prevents you from having matching luggage campaigns that say the same thing across all mediums. And it also keeps you from having disjointed campaigns that don't make sense. The comms framework helps give your creative and media partners clarity on what they need to create and when. The final step is writing out all the steps it will take to create that document. This is important because it gives you an understanding of how much time it may take to create these documents. For example, for the comms framework, the first step is the initial kickoff meeting with the client. Then you need the meeting with all the content production and media partners. This might be people inside the company or outside. It will most likely take you 8 hours for all this, depending on the campaign and company size. Then it's time to collect the data from these various teams. They must share the information they have about the customer and the various stages of the journey. Collecting this data together will take about 8 hours. Once you've gathered all the data, put it all together so it makes sense. This step can take another 8 hours. It is your choice now whether you want to do this as a workshop with all the partners or you want to do it alone. Each will have variable costs. If you do it alone, I would work up 1 to 3 comms frameworks and then have a work session meeting with the client to see what they're liking. That would be around 2 hours. After that, I would come back and refine the comms framework for another 4 hours. Then I would normally take it to the content and media partners and get their feedback. This will take another 4 hours. Then there would be the final presentation with all the partners on the comms framework, as well as the briefs that they would be getting from this document. That meeting would go for another 2 hours. To sum it all up, the comms framework document would take about 4 days to complete. You have now worked out what your floor rate is for how much you would charge to create a certain output. In our example of the comms framework, we know that we would not charge any less than 4 times our day rate. However, this is our floor rate because we are once again looking at the cost from the perspective of how much it would cost us to do. What we really need to do is look at it from the other perspective, which is how much value is it going to give the client? With strategy documents, it's often hard to get to the ROI as we're often so far away from the creation of the final output. So it's often tough to see the value. One thing that you can do is show how you are driving efficiency in the process. There's less meetings and swirl because you've now given clear direction on the project. The other consideration is that your cost will usually be framed up against what they've paid for other strategy and consultant providers in the past. How much they pay for qualitative research or testing will usually be what they are judging you against. If you are great at your job and you believe in the value you bring to a company, then there's a high chance you are not charging enough. I can't tell you the number of clients who've told me after the project that I've undervalued my skills and what I've offered. What I think is the best place to start is add 20% to your floor rate and then start scaling up from there. There will be times when you need to negotiate your rate. Some companies just have this as part of their contract that they need to ask for a discount on the rate. Asking for a reduction in rate is fine from the client's point of view and should be expected. However, the number one rule is that if they ask for a reduction in rate, you need to match the offer with a reduction in your time. Give them an option of things that you will take out. This requires you to understand what is fixed and variable during each step of the process. So for instance, with the comms framework example, I can't take away the stage of getting research and running it past partners before bringing it back. The reason for this is that the adoption of the framework will not happen without these 2 steps. However, I could tell the client that I will not be showing them 3 examples and they will only see 1 example of a comms framework, which will save me time. I will also outline the importance of showing 3 examples so they see the value they are losing from taking this part of the project away. For instance, not seeing 3 examples, you often find that you sometimes miss the other directions that can be fruitful and unexpected, which is what leads to better advertising. So if you're interested in freelancing as a strategist, check out my checklist that goes through the steps you need to create for starting out as a freelancer. Then if you're really interested, you should definitely check out my course on freelancing and advertising.